I'm truly honored, beyond words, to introduce our next honoree, Tarana Burke, the founder of the Me Too movement. Tarana has dedicated more than 25 years of her life to social justice and to laying the groundwork for a movement that was initially created to help young women of color who survived sexual abuse and assault. The movement now inspires solidarity, amplifies the voices of thousands of victims of sexual abuse, and puts the focus back on survivors. Me Too has become the battle cry for other efforts such as Time's Up, which was founded by a number of courageous women in Hollywood, and we applaud them. However, let's not forget the thousands of women who are nameless, that we do not know, but need our help. That is the bedrock of the Me Too movement and Tarana's life's work. In recent months, there has been a series of high-profile arrests and resignations as a result of a number of brave women coming forward alleging sexual harassment and violence. Some would say that the recent case of a Hollywood executive launched the Me Too movement. What we know in this room is that the movement was launched 10 years ago by Tarana Burke. Here is a short video interview with the phenomenal woman, Tarana Burke.
If this was anything else, we had 12 million people engage with this hashtag in a 24-hour time period when it first went viral. If we had 12 million people who suddenly woke up tomorrow and had some infectious disease, the whole world would stop. The whole world would pay attention. And our focus would be primarily on how did this happen, how do we stop it, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. We would be thinking about finding a cure. And so we have millions of people standing up saying that their lives have been touched by the disease of sexual violence, and we're having a wrong conversation.
Please welcome Tarana Burke. Before Tarana accepts this award, just a few more words. In May, Tarana joined the New York Women's Foundation, led by 2017 McSilver Honoree Anna Oliveira, to create a $2 million fund to support victims of harassment and violence in need of support and legal assistance. I am pleased to announce that in honor of Tarana and her courageous work, NYU McSilver will donate $1,000 to the Me Too Fund.
Thank you. Well, that's a nice surprise. I can't believe y'all put me up after the preacher. Ooh, Pastor. I believe I've been, one of your members has been trying to recruit me to your church for about the last 2 or 3 months, and now I said, this must be God saying, go on and get your butt up on Sunday and walk them couple of blocks down to your church, so I'm coming to see you. Thank you so much. I am really, really grateful to be here, and I mean that because a couple of weeks ago I did my first commencement speech. It's a big deal, right? And I was trying to figure out what to say to these young people who were, they're coming from the UPenn School of Social Policy. So these were like social workers, and these are going to be folks in the movement coming up. And I came up with these little nuggets. But one of the things that I told them that I thought was one of the most important things was to find your tribe. Like, this work is hard. This is not, one of the things that will happen in moments like this is that we find one person and they're like, Tarana Burke has the answers. Look, Me Too movement, right? And then our egos allow us to take up all the space in the room. And then everything becomes about the Me Too movement and not the 50 years before that and the thousands of women and men and people who have been doing this work before me on whose shoulders I stand. And those are my tribe. And having an award that is something that deals with social justice, even in the title, is so, I feel so grateful for that, because starting to do this work, I had dedicated my life to social justice years ago when I was 14 years old. I remember, I don't know if you remember Erica, the OG. We were doing the Million Youth March back in like 98, right? We've been on the ground a long, long time. But part of the issue that I found as somebody who was committed to this work was that I couldn't find folks who could take the issue of sexual violence seriously enough to elevate it to a social justice issue. And what I kept saying to my comrades and these folks who I'm on the ground with, we can't just keep responding to police violence and economic violence and political violence and see this violence happening in our community. If I tell you that I have 100 girls in my program and 50 of them have been touched by sexual violence, and every one of those 50 lives in this community, then we have a community problem. That's what a social justice problem looks like. And so I'm so excited that it's finally being acknowledged, not just as an individual problem, but as a community problem. And it's a community problem that we can solve. It's a community problem that is not so far removed. A year ago, we couldn't even have a national conversation about sexual violence. And look at us now. And so I was listening to your sermon, taking notes, because that's what I do when there's a good word in the room. And a couple of things occurred to me when you were talking. That part about we know trauma was resonating with me, because in the work that I did with Black and brown girls, primarily for most of my career, with Black and brown women for most of my career, I've seen so much trauma. And the thing that was missing in our community was we can identify the trauma, right? Because we see it all around us. We live in it, we touch it, we see it, we think about it all the time, but nobody was speaking healing into our community. Because as much as we know trauma, we also know joy. We know joy. There is a way in which we go about, we've been socialized to think about, particularly people who are marginalized, to think that we have to go somewhere else to find joy and to find healing. And our work was about the reality that we know joy. We have to find it, identify it, curate it in our own communities and in our own lives, because that's where the healing is coming from. The idea of Me Too was about digging into the wellspring that is you. I am my own body of experience. This experience doesn't define me 100%, but it's real. It's here, and since it's here, I'm gonna dig into it and use it to the benefit of other people. Forget about all the stuff you see on TV. Forget about all of these other things that we've had, this narrative that we have, this overarching thing about what the Me Too movement is, about taking down powerful men, about folks in Hollywood, about all the rest of that. It is at its core about an exchange of empathy between two people. It is about the power that I have because I survived. It's so interesting to me that we always engage survivors. I feel emotional because I really was touched by what you said, but it's so amazing to me that we engage people who survive sexual violence from a place of pity all the time. Like when you think about it, when people talk to them, like, what do you need? How are you doing? And those things are good. We need to know that. You need to talk to people and figure out what they need, but we don't need pity. We don't need pity. Pity is not healing. And I'm gonna tell you something. If you can stand up after you have faced something as hard as sexual violence, if you can stand up after you have had to go through something as hard as losing the ability to make decisions about your own body, you can't tell me that you don't have power. There's power in survival. And so we don't need to be engaged from a place of pity. People need to understand that survivors have power. And this movement and this moment is about us connecting with each other and also connecting with each other to show the world the kind of power that we have. We have answers. We need help, we need allies, we need advocates, but we don't need pity. This is a movement of people. It's not a woman's movement. It's a survivor's movement. And so, I'm gonna stop acting like I'm a pastor because you got me all riled up sitting in that chair. I was checking off the list like, oh, I have all 3 of those, thank you. But mostly that last thing about a hunger for healing and wholeness is what drives me. It is, I want us, I'm gonna be honest, I want everybody to be whole and healed, but my passion is about us. I want people who are most often forgotten. I want black and brown baby girls. I want little black and brown baby boys. I want trans children and queer children. I want people who are forgotten. I want Native folks who we don't talk about at all as if they don't exist. I want them to feel whole. I want them to know healing is possible. And I want I want those of us who say that we believe in justice to understand how deep the injustice is of sexual violence. And I want us to know that collectively, we have everything we need to interrupt sexual violence. We have everything we need to stop this in the next generation. People use this quote all the time and probably use it wrong, but we are indeed the ones that we've been waiting for. And so I am hoping that people don't just keep talking about Tarana Burke as an individual, and that when you see my name and you hear the Me Too movement, you think of it as a beacon for what's possible for us in this work. I don't represent an I never have. I represent an us, and this is us. Thank you.